Hello, everyone. Welcome to Belle's Beyond Podcast by Belle Sisters. My name is Massey, and I am your beloved host on this show. Belle Sisters is a community-driven social enterprise building support system for women founders of color. Our community fosters safe spaces where these women form genuine connections and they basically grow together. And today we have Sally on the show. Sally helps middle managers be productive leaders. She's a global, multi-award winning certified speaking professional who's helped over 20,000 middle managers from diverse industries, both locally and globally. Now, with her unique blend of experiences, exceptional qualifications, and humor, Sally's keynote presentations, workshop, and books inspire, transform, and deliver results. So, welcome to the show, Sally.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me, and it's a delight to be here and to have a conversation that maybe inspires and helps people to believe in themselves and keep going and growing.
Yes, definitely. So, Sally, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Definitely. One of the things that people ask me is how do I get into what I do as a professional speaker and facilitator? And I think when I look back at my resume since I first started working, I was always in front of people, and not necessarily as a leader, but I was definitely always in front of people, serving through helping them learn a skill, helping them to take accountability, helping them to step up, helping them to realize the potential of their role or what they can bring or do. And so I think there's been this, I'd like to call it a golden thread. There's this golden thread through my career of being someone who has always wanted to serve other people, what lights me up is when I know that I've helped someone realize their own potential. So I fell into doing what I do now because I have over my years, and I'm not young, I'm not old, but I'm not young. But over my years, I've had to report to middle managers. I've also been a middle manager, and I've also had to lead middle managers. And so, having seen that mid-level leadership, some people call it a squeeze. I call it the best bit of a burger, because the best is in the middle. Having experienced mid-level leadership from every angle and been it myself, I find it is the most fascinating, the most neglected, and has the most women, and also has to me, I think, the most untapped potential for
Mm.
helping organizations to really succeed. So that's just a little bit about who I am and pretty much my ethos in a lot of ways.
So, Sally, there was something you said. You mentioned the burger, and you talked
Yes,
about the best being in the middle, and
yes,
I thought that was hilarious and cool. So, can you can you tell us a little bit, how you came up with
absolutely.
that, the story behind that?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that I really want to make the whole idea of mid-level leadership memorable. And
Mm.
so, and I like food. And I have to tell you my guilty pleasure. I do like burgers. Not good for my waistline, but I do like them. But it just hit me one day. When it comes to food, what's in the middle of food? And a burger was the most obvious one. And I thought, yes, because, and so the burger now becomes the metaphor as well as a framework. And so when I talk about mid-level leaders, and I want people to think of them and remember them, so that they engage them more, so that they develop them more, so that they raise up and help them to step into the full potential of the role. I talk about, middle managers are like burgers because the best is in the middle. And I also talk about no one goes into a burger joint and says, just give me the roll, don't give me any filling. No one says that.
Yeah.
Well, I've not met anyone who says
Anyone that
that.
says that? Yeah.
Right? Maybe there is, maybe I'm yet to meet them. But, and then I have a little bit of fun and I talk about, in the corporate world, we always talk about the top bun with its executive and its exclusive sesame seeds sitting on top, So we have a bit of fun with the whole metaphor. But the serious side to my burger is that I also talk about the 5 key ingredients and secret sauce for high performing middle managers. So each ingredient in the burger actually represents something very important. So we talk about protein being fundamental. And when you build a burger, when you make your own burger at home, you have protein. Now, I have a bit of fun with that. And I also say now for my vegan friends, if it's a, soy infused tofurkey patty, that's fine, but it's still protein.
Protein.
So, yeah. So the protein represents your values. And then we build on that from the inner work to the outer work of skills. And finish with the secret sauce, which is about you taking and using your leadership as a mid-level leader to lift others. And then there's also elements around the bottom bun and the top bun. And I mean, I can talk about this for days, but we don't have days. So that should give you a bit of insight into the burger. And the very first time I shared my brand new burger keynote, there was someone in the audience and they turned to the person next to them who happened to be someone I know very well and said, "Oh, I need that burger lady for my team." And so I instantly became the burger lady.
Burger lady. That I think that's actually very funny, but pretty cool because I think it makes you very memorable. One of the things I was actually going to ask is when you presented this framework, whether it was for your keynotes or your workshops, how it was received, because I'm just wondering,
Mm.
have people ever maybe said something negative about it? And if so, how did you navigate that?
Yeah, brilliant question because when I very first was trying to craft the message and make sure, and this is good for anyone in leadership and in entrepreneurship where
Mm,
you have to get a message across, right? And if you're working on making sure that the message has meaning, you actually need to be clear about what you want that the receiver to either know, feel, or do. And then also, how do you make sure that it has some gravitas or the level of credibility matches what you're trying to achieve? And
mhm,
so I've always been playful, but I've also been playful that fits inside very safely inside a corporate environment. And
mm,
so I'm very good at bridging that. And so the burger was safe enough. The burger is well known. Now, the way in which I make sure that it can go global is I make sure that we talk about a vegan burger or a chicken burger or a fish burger, or I make sure that I'm aware of cultural elements that may impact on how a burger is perceived. And
mhm,
some people think that's really weird, but if you cross borders, if you leave your own home and you find that people don't know what a burger is, then I might be using the word sandwich, So it's being culturally aware. That's one part of it. I have had someone when I was sharing the new message in the early days with a few colleagues, and one person said, "Oh my gosh, that's so unhealthy. Why would you do that?" And I said, "Well, I'm very mindful not to align it with some brands that are very fast food and very unhealthy. And the
mhm,
way in which you will see all my imaging, it's a healthy burger. it's portrayed as a nutritious, healthy burger that actually has tomato and lettuce and
Mm,
pickles that are, things that are not unhealthy for you. And I talk about protein and dairy and vegetables and fruit and the condiment. And so, and I said to that person, how would I make it attractive for you? And her comment to me was, well, yes, I'm vegan and vegetarian, but now I get it. I think I just want a wholemeal bun. So don't make it a white bun, white bread bun. And so it really was quite nuanced as to making sure I was encapsulating everybody in the audience who
mhm,
could resonate with it. And at one event, I had a speaker that was on before me, and they planned it this way. When it was very clever of the organisers, he talked about health, and he talked about how bad white bread was for you. That was his message, and he
mhm.
wanted everyone to either stop eating bread or just have wholemeal bread. Now, I don't want to enter that debate. That's got nothing to do with me. So when it was my turn to talk about the buns, I talked about now, as we all know, as Rob has said, we need to have wholemeal buns. So just have a bit of fun with it. Um, so I haven't had a whole lot of negativity, but I do know there'll be people thinking,
Mhm.
and I do ask the audience, what's your favorite burger ingredient as well? And so we have lots of backwards and forwards, and I have a bit of fun with that as well. And I get people involved, and I have had someone say, "Does it have to be a burger?" And I said, "No." I said, "Oh, that was the other one." They said rather than bread, they want mushrooms as instead of bread rolls, instead of bread buns. Yeah, just big
Oh,
mushrooms
that's
instead of the bread.
that's unique.
So yeah, so that's all right. Yeah. And I love that. That's being inclusive, and it's being
Mhm.
aware of the
Wait,
diversity of
yeah.
diet and preferences. And that was fantastic because I hadn't thought of that in that moment. And believe it or not, since then, my husband and I have burgers with mushrooms
With
as opposed to
mushrooms?
bread.
Oh, that is hilarious. That is
So it's been good. It's been just a delight to learn. And I think that's the thing. When someone doesn't resonate with your message or someone pushes back on your message, whether
mhm.
you're an entrepreneur or a leader, the invitation I would put to everyone is lean into that.
Mm,
Lean into it and learn, what doesn't resonate for you? Help me understand. Because that mushroom learning was just fantastic because I love mushrooms. My husband likes them. I love them. But it was really a valuable learning lesson. And it's sometimes what we need to do is remember the way in which they express the way they might not agree with you. We have
mhm,
to remove that from the content of what they're saying because
mm.
sometimes this might be a bit of a sting in the tail, and
Yeah.
the delivery might not be quite so pleasant, and that can hurt. Let's be honest, we're all human. But if we can take that breath and say, okay, let's move the delivery to the side and just explore what they mean. Tell me more about that. Help me
Mhm.
understand, and that there's an opportunity in there, and it's
No,
just feedback.
exactly. It's feedback. I just really like how you kind of emphasize on basically taking out the emotions out of it and just leaning into what the person says, because I think that's in a way what makes you a phenomenal leader. Because you're willing to listen, right? Because I was kind of thinking about it and I was just imagine you're giving maybe not a keynote, but a workshop, and you're bringing your burger framework and someone says something a little negative. I was actually imagining that as you were speaking, and I asked myself, that's interesting. How would I deal with it? But then
Mm,
you said that you asked her, okay, how would you want it done? And I thought to
mm,
myself, that's absolutely brilliant. And,
mm,
I just realized that that's you also making it quite inclusive, and realizing that there are cultural differences. We're all
mm.
unique in our own ways, and I think that's wonderful. Yeah, I
Yeah,
really I really liked that. So
yeah.
now as a leader, Sally, when did you first realize you were a leader, even if you didn't really have that title?
This I hesitate to share this because I don't want people to misinterpret it. But I knew I was a leader when I was a very little girl because I was a brownie. Now it's the equivalent of the
The Girl
in
Scout?
America you have Girl Scouts, don't you? And
Yeah, the
what's
Girl
below
Scout.
girl younger than Girl Scouts?
I'm not sure. I was never a Girl Scout.
Okay, so there's Girl Scouts, but before you're old enough to be a Girl Scout, there's a group that's younger. I don't know what they're called in other countries, but in Australia, where I'm from, they're called brownies. Terrible name, but that's what we were. But I was a
You were a
brownie.
brownie. I was like,
Yeah.
Shimi, she was being eaten.
I will never, ever, ever, ever show you the photo. Trust me. But I mean, I was very cute, let's face it. I was very cute. But it was an ugly uniform, right? But anyway, I had the best time. But to answer your question,
Mm,
you get divided up into little subgroups, and you
mhm.
have sixers and seconders is what they used to be called. And a seconder is like the vice president, and the sixer was the president of that little group.
Mhm.
And you get voted. Everyone votes for who that is. And I was voted straight into sixer. I was never a seconder.
Oh,
Normally you move through to be seconder, then sixer. But for some reason, I think because I could have this level of organization, this
mhm.
level of rallying everyone together to play a game or to do our chores or to get the hut organized that we were in and that we met at. And I think that's something that people saw in me before I saw it in me. That's for sure. And the tale about my organization skills is, and I didn't know this, I didn't remember this, but my mother told me this when I was really little, before I even went to school.
Mhm.
We had this really old typewriter, and then we had this front room in our house, and I would get paper, old scrap paper, and I would wind it through the old manual typewriter. Like we're talking no electricity. You had to hit those
Hit
keys
the,
on the
yeah.
keyboard really hard. And so I would sit there and I would be tapping away on the keyboard and dictating orders to my imaginary
Imaginary friends.
minion. Yes, yes. And so mum said I was a boss lady by the time I was about 5 or 4 or something. And so thankfully I've toned that bossy dictatorship down. But she said she could see that how much I enjoyed that organizing, that
Mhm.
rallying, that getting people together to achieve something. So yeah, when I was little, and it has been a thread ever since. And I currently actually sit as the national president for Professional Speakers Australia. So it doesn't seem to leave me, or I won't leave it alone.
I think that's amazing. So it's something that is, I would say, innate in you. It's something that you've always just been a leader that has just come naturally for you.
And I do think also when you see something that might need, I don't want to say fixing because that assumes it's broken,
It's
but
broken.
if you can see something that needs attention, if you need something that needs support, if you see something that needs someone to get it going
Mhm.
or to move it along, I usually sit there and I'm a raging extrovert and I like to get my hands dirty and so and do. And so I think that adds to that as well in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
I'll wait and allow someone else to step forward if they want to, because I'm aware that I can be very quick to take over. And
Mhm.
so through maturity and realizing that other people also like to step up, I won't rush at it as much as I used to when I was younger, and allow others to step forward. I will even look around the room and invite people because I can see
Mhm.
the potential in them. But if no one steps up, then I'll do it. And that tends to be how I show up quite a lot.
I love that. So, okay, well, I guess when you were younger, you would definitely just jump into it, but now you're a little seasoned. You would
Yes.
not really do that. You just wait until someone does it, but then if no one does it, then of course you step forward. Well, okay. So I'm wondering, have you ever in any situation not been taken seriously or been pressured to lead in a certain way to be taken seriously?
Uh, I've definitely not been taken seriously, and that was a gender thing. That was
Oh.
actually an age and gender.
Hmm.
Um, and so I had a senior leader who, excuse me, who, because I was one of the youngest CEOs in that particular role,
Mm-hmm.
um, I was considered, too young, too immature,
Mm-hmm.
not experienced enough. And then add on top of that, they were a bit of a, this might be a terrible saying, but they were stale, pale male, right? Unfortunately, and I don't put that label on a whole all our male
Mm-hmm.
friends out there, but this
Yeah.
gentleman, this particular person,
Person.
was
Mhm.
was very much a misogynistic in many ways, and not just to me. Like
Mhm.
I observed it, I observed many people on the receiving end of a lot of his chauvinism and misogyny. And so I was very standoffish already. And I think the fact that I knew that he was like that, it actually may have inadvertently made me behave in certain ways that I felt was needed to protect me, and therefore I held back. I didn't step into the full potential of that role as much as I could have, while he was in the role he was in. When he finished his role and moved on, and the next person came in, it was chalk and cheese. It was very different, and I was listened to and I was heard. And I think also it's interesting to learn and make sure you do take the learning that when situations like that happen, how are you behaving? You know, yes, there's that behavior that is being imposed upon you and is negative or is challenging or frustrating or even potentially just terrible. Let's face it.
Mhm.
In some situations, ask yourself also, how is it impacting on the way I behave? Not from a have you let yourself down, or could you have done something, making yourself feel bad, but just learn and understand that that sort of behavior can trigger this sort of behavior
Good
in me.
behavior. Yes.
Yeah. And so what's my learning from that? And
Mm.
my learning, when I look back at that very young Sally, I would say to that Sally now, address the misogyny or the chauvinism directly, politely and respectfully, but directly, and call it out and say, well, right now I would like you to hear me as the person in the CEO position who has the information and has valuable information to offer around the strategic direction of blah blah blah.
Mhm.
Like I can distinctly remember that moment in that meeting where I was shut down, and he railroaded over all, basically every woman in that meeting, listened to the men, interrupted the women, and then the strategic direction that he wanted to drive through missed out on some information that I was trying to share. And then it was not too much long later when the implementation of that strategy couldn't happen because I kept saying to everyone around, except this person who wasn't listening, it's not going to work until we do this. It's not going to work until we
Mhm.
do this. But I wasn't listened to. So I desperately wanted to say, I told you so, like a little child, but my maturity kicked in then.
Yeah. No, I'm really sorry you had that experience, and I do think that a lot of women have unfortunately
Mm,
experienced that, which is why we have a lot of, women-only groups. We see women in STEM, just women in tech, women in
mm,
science, just because we understand that a lot of these male-dominated fields, you are sometimes regarded, I don't want to use the word less than, but you are not giving the same regard as your male counterparts in the same field. Um,
Mm,
but again, I also really like that, like you said, you've kind of learned from it. You've looked back and you've said, okay, this time around, if it happens again, hopefully it doesn't, but if it does happen, I am going to address it head on. And I think that's also something that some of us women, we sometimes don't do because
mm,
I've seen that a lot of us, well, I wouldn't say a lot of us, but sometimes some of the women that I've come across, when we're put in uncomfortable situations, we laugh it off just because we're uncomfortable. It's like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable, and then you giggle because you
mm,
don't really want to come across as rude or as the B
no.
word.
Mm,
But also, I think that, like you said, you definitely something you should address politely because, again, if
mm,
not, you'll probably be blaming yourself later on in life. And then this man is also going to go ahead and do it to another woman and another woman until someone
mm.
does address it. So, well, if what would you say to the younger Sally or to a woman who finds herself in a similar situation, such as you did with that man that was misogynistic?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really, it's important to take a moment and look at the situation and try and understand that person, excuse me, um, really well. So, is this a pattern? Is
Mm-hmm.
this actually who this person is, or is there something going on and it's a blip in the radar? It's an unusual blip. And so, um, and I think even if it's just an unusual blip, there's an opportunity there as well to say, hey, I noticed you seemed a bit frustrated, or the way you responded to that question was didn't seem to be in your normal character. Is everything going okay? Because what that does is it says, I noticed you. I noticed a different behavior. And you're coming from a space of empathy. One of my most amazing mentors said to me, even on your worst days, in those worst moments, start from empathy. And
Mm,
so I think, and I know sometimes that some people might be listening to this and thinking, I've got a male chauvinistic bully of a man, of a boss, and you want me to have empathy? And so stick with me. Yes, because here's a twist on this one. What's going on in their world that they feel they have to be like that?
mm,
What is so lacking in their development, their self-esteem, their their self view, that they see that this behavior is the only way they can behave. And so, if we can try and dig into that for ourselves and come from that place of empathy, then it sets us up to be able to say to the person who's been rude or chauvinistic or arrogant to us, and I would say this, do this privately,
mhm,
is if you can, is look, in the meeting, I was trying to convey to you some really important information that's going to impact your strategy. And I really think it's worth hearing and understanding, because I'm at the coalface and I've got the information from where it's going to be implemented, and this will impact. And I don't want to waste time and money for this
mhm,
organization. The other way of looking at it is, if you have to do it in the meeting when it's happening, is just wait until that person's finished talking. And there's little things you can do to say, before I was interrupted, I'd like to complete this because I think this is important information for everyone to hear.
mhm.
You know, or find the gap in when they're talking and just say, could I please finish? Because I think because I know what I have to share is going to
Right.
impact where we're going.
Mhm,
Yeah. So it's like, take that deep breath.
mhm,
And I've even had a meeting where a man was constantly interrupting the females, and I just waited and I waited, and I said, okay, look, I was not the chairperson of this meeting, but I was definitely had a bit of um, frustration that the women were being interrupted. And so I actually waited till there was a bit of a gap. I said, okay, could I just please ask right now that we go around the room, no one interrupts anyone, and that we just do one go around the room and make sure that everyone who has valuable information to add to this issue is
Mm-hmm.
heard. And so we are not missing anything when we move into our decision making. And then I instantly looked at the man that was doing the interrupting and I said, is that okay? And then moved around. And I made sure I made that eye contact. And then after the meeting, one of the ladies who had been constantly interrupted came up to me and she said, thank you so much. I just didn't know how I was going to be heard. So it's trying different things, but being very aware of you don't want to humiliate, you don't want to publicly embarrass, you don't want to, because that doesn't fix anything for
Do
anyone. But
anything, yeah.
starting with that empathy and finding a way to open up and allow others to be heard is also really useful.
I really like that you brought up empathy because, sometimes, as you said, if you have someone who is misogynistic or who is just a terrible human being in general, it's very hard to lead from empathy because, at this point, you're just thinking to yourself, you're horrible. I don't want to, I don't really care. But now as a leader, I'm just wondering, how do you balance that authority with empathy? Because I'm pretty sure our listeners, they're gonna be wondering, okay, what if I come from a place of empathy and then I start getting undermined, or, this person just keeps doing what they are doing, as opposed to coming from a place of, I guess, a place of force, or maybe trying to
Mm,
showcase some level of strength. So,
mm,
how do you balance both empathy and authority as a
mm.
leader?
Yes, so to me, I don't want anyone to misunderstand, and maybe it's worth looking up in the dictionary as a reminder, not because anyone's dumb, but it's a really, like in my workshops, I actually, particularly women in middle management, I get them to look up the word imposter so that they
Mm,
actually understand the true definition. And
mm,
so look up the word empathy, and that I think would remind us all that that's not about weakness, and it's not about being submissive and or passive or
mm,
giving in. It's actually something completely different. And so in my mind, when someone is behaving so terribly to me,
mm.
I think so something's gone on. Something is driving this person to behave this way. So, and that's all it needs. That's all it needs is to me to think it's almost like a kind version of asking why are they behaving like this?
Mm.
Okay. Now that doesn't mean they get away with that behavior. What it means is let's go explore. What it means is, look, I'm noticing some aggressive tone, and I'm noticing frustration, and I'm noticing, you're interrupting quite a few people. Is everything all right? Like, what's going on that is because this behavior is not allowing other people to contribute. So what's happening? And then if they say nothing, blah, 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 and I said, well, then I need you to be aware that your behavior, your communication style is excluding valuable members of the team. And we need to make sure that we're listening to and hearing from the experts in their roles, because what they have to share impacts our decisions. So you see how you're not letting them get away
Yeah.
with it, but
Mm-hmm.
if you start from curiosity and empathy,
Mm-hmm.
because maybe they are also clueless that they're doing
That
it.
they're doing something wrong. Yeah.
They may have just been, that's the way they're brought up, or that's what they learned, or that's what they believed was the way to lead or communicate,
Mm-hmm.
and they haven't seen or been open to or exposed to or challenged before that there's other ways to communicate. And so let's give them that opportunity. If they choose not to take that opportunity or don't see it or don't agree with it, then you can be really direct. And again, direct does not mean rude. Direct is different. Direct is being really clear. And
Mhm.
Brene Brown, in her Dare to Lead book, I love this. She shared her experience of going through Alcoholics Anonymous and says that she saw this sign or a poster there that said, "Clear is kind, unclear is unkind."
Mm.
And so that's just being direct, and it's not being rude, it's just being clear.
It's just being clear. Yeah. No, I really like what you said about just basically the empathy coming from a place of understanding and curiosity and trying to
Mm,
see if there's a driving factor to us why they are behaving the way they are behaving, but then also holding them accountable so that they are aware that their behavior is, maybe aggressive or causing others not to give the information that they are supposed to give. So I really like how you broke that down, and I think this is really valuable advice and information for our listeners. Um,
oh my-
so as we're rounding up, I'm going to ask you now, because yes, you are an amazing, amazing leader, and I am just having a very great, wonderful conversation with you.
Thank
But
you.
again, we're all human. So I know that there have been times where you might have felt like an imposter at some point.
Mm.
So how did you handle imposter syndrome as a leader in leadership spaces?
Preparation. Preparation, rehearsing and
Mm.
preparing, even not just as a speaker, but as a leader as well. And I think whenever I have walked into a situation not prepared, the imposter is louder in my head. And those times when I've walked in with all my papers and all my notes and
Mm.
even notes where it's like, what are the possible objections I'm going to get? So what's my answer to that objection? And even when I've thought about, okay, who are the people in the room, and think about who they are, what their function is, and therefore, based on who they are and their personality and their communication style, and then their function, what will be their objection to what I'm going to talk about? And so, how do I frame my answer so it
Mhm.
resonates with them? And um, and so, the more prepared I am, the quieter the imposter is.
Imposters. I
Yeah.
love
Now,
that.
here's the thing. I've been a professional speaker for 20 years and I still get nervous.
Mhm.
And I actually like that. I actually like being nervous, and here's why. Because it tells me that it's my body's way of telling me that this is important work and I want to do a good job. And I
Mm.
love that. If there are no nerves, then I feel as though maybe I'm being a bit complacent, and that
Complacent.
scares me because
Yeah.
that means I'm not doing, I haven't done enough, or something's missing. But
Yeah.
if I'm nervous, then I get all those butterflies and kind of go, let's get into formation, my friends, and let's fly. And I harness that energy and I just bring it to the stage and I pour it into serving that audience. So I don't try to get rid of my nerves at all, ever.
I love what you said about preparation, because I can't remember where I heard this, but someone said confidence doesn't come from maybe you trying to fake it. It comes from doing something over and over and over again. Because
Mm,
the more you practice and the more you practice, the more confident you get until you're sure that you can, basically go on the stage and give your talk. So I
mm,
really like what you said about preparing, because again, I mean, of course, if you don't prepare, then you're going to get super nervous. And of course, then the imposter syndrome, as you said, becomes loud. And the other
mm.
thing that you said that I also like and wanted to touch on is basically the how, okay, at the beginning, i- if you don't, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it. So I have a friend that she says something. She says, "May I not be complacent where just because I have spoken multiple times, I don't go prepare for the next speaking engagement." So it's
Okay.
kind of, yeah, it's kind of what you said about you've spoken for the past 20 years, but you still
Mm,
go, you prepare again and
mm,
again. And you still get nervous because then that helps you understand that this is important work. Because, I mean, of course, like you said, if you're not preparing and if you're complacent, then like, oh, it's not
And
really
I
a big
think
deal.
if your friend has presented or delivered the same material time and
Mhm.
time again,
Yeah.
then they know it. That's
Yeah.
fine because that's it's almost they've been rehearsing, they've been doing. And
Mhm.
so, I get nervous probably more because it's a different audience,
Mhm.
and I actually get nervous when it's the same audience because they already know me and I
You
feel
already
like I've got
know
to
it.
deliver even more. So, yeah, so I get that. I get that it's not complacency if it's the same, if it's their expertise and they know it and they've been living and working and growing and developing that expertise for years, then that's the work. That's the work they've done. Yeah. I in COVID, when COVID hit and I lost all my work, I ended out, I went Googling the word confidence because I felt like I needed to find somewhere because I had none at the
Mm.
time. And I stumbled across a certificate, a coaching course in confidence, and I'm now a certified confidence coach. And I love your point where when you understand what's making your confidence or what's making the imposter syndrome loud and really unpack that and then you know where to put more preparation in
Mhm.
and that's what helps make confidence amplified and the imposter quieter. And I think for women, and this is something that I loved, that I learned, and it's my interpretation from learning this work, and I think it resonates really well for women because one of the things that happens is we'll be doing our job and the boss will say to us, oh look, I think you do really, really well, you need to be more confident though. Right? We get told to be more confident. So then we think about that and we reflect on it. And so we speak up or we take the initiative or we put a hand up on something. And then all of a sudden, oh, you're a bit pushy and a bit bossy and a bit something, something,
Mhm.
something. Right? And it's like, well, which one do you want me to be?
Yeah.
Either I'm not confident enough or I'm too confident. And so one of the things I really want to and therefore we start to shy away and pull back again. And so I want to invite people to think of confidence as not being arrogant. It's not being over the top with self-belief. It's not thinking you're better than everyone else. I like the word certain. I have certainty that
Certain.
I am capable at doing this. I have certainty that this will be that outcome. I have certainty. And so maybe that will help. Maybe that's a nice word that helps people to step back in and ask themselves, well, where am I actually certain about what I do, how I do it, where I do it, what value I offer? And that might be a nice re-entry into finding that level of confidence.
Yes, I love that certainty. I'm gonna be using that word from today. I mean, I've always used it, but again, just more intentional using it. So thank you for that, Sally. So I
That's
did want to end with this. What advice would you give a woman who is stepping into leadership for the first time?
Go slowly, breathe. It doesn't all have to happen today. Take your time and take your time to understand the team you've got and take your time to really understand the team you've got and the expectations that are on you and your team.
Mm,
Don't rush that. Have as many conversations as you possibly can with as many leaders above you and conversations that include not just what are the expectations you have of my function and my team's function, but also what's the biggest lesson you've learnt in leadership? Ask them.
mm,
And one of the great ways of doing it is that if you were starting out in leadership today, what do you wish you knew back then that you now know now? And
mm.
ask them that. Trust me, you ask a senior leader that question, they'll talk to you for hours. They love talking about themselves. We all do. Um, so ask them. And the act of doing that gives you great information. It gives you a
Mhm.
whole lot of feedback and information to reflect for yourself, but also The process of you reaching out to them, what does that do? It makes you visible to them. It makes you come across as someone interested, as wanting to do well, and you've shown interest in that leader. So you're going to be on their radar, and
Mm,
chances are they're likely to lean in and be more supportive to you. Now, that's one thing I would say. And take your time. I was like, what's the saying? Like a bull in a china shop. I think that's the saying. Where I just wanted everything done, and I just was so fast, and I wanted everyone to be doing everything straight away. And that was my pace, and I didn't take into account not everyone runs at that pace.
mm,
And so
mm,
slow it down. Give yourself the opportunity to be present, to enjoy it, to learn who your team are. Because when you take the time to learn who they are, you learn what type of communication style they have, and
mhm.
that helps you to then reach them and engage them. You get to learn what work they do like to do because it's easy, what work they don't like to do because it's difficult, and how you can support them.
Mhm.
And then you can build a really strong team culture. And I think when the culture of your team is really strong, you can handle almost anything.
Almost anything. That's true. That's
Mm,
definitely true.
mm.
Thank you so much for that, Sally. I think that's wonderful, wonderful advice. Um, well, listeners, I am going to say, as we're ending this today, I want to say thank you for being part of the conversation. And to our guests, thank you for coming today. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you just for sharing gems and telling us, telling us more about yourself and having this conversation on leadership. And if you are listening and you have been craving honest conversations like this, or a place where you don't have to figure everything out alone, community Bell Sisters exists for you. So you can go to our website, bellsisters.com, and you can learn more about us and join us. We would love to have you. And again, to Sally, thank you so, so much for coming on the Bells Beyond podcast. It has been wonderful having you here.
Mazzy, thank you so much. It's been a fantastic conversation, and if it inspires even one person, it makes my day. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And we will see you all in the next episode. Bye, everyone.